Phillip Rivers and the Colts were thinking upset, but the Seattle Seahawks had other plans. I'll be diving into Seattle's 11th victory of the season coming up next year on our postgame edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Whether you're tuning in from nearby West Seattle or you're down in Phoenix, Arizona, and Cardinals country, thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network out there. The Seahawks nearly having a disaster on Sunday at the hands of Phillip Rivers and Indianapolis Colts, who were ahead for more than 95% of this game. But the Seahawks found a way to eke it out late. I'll be breaking down Jason Myers' clutch performance to send the Seahawks to their 11th win, another strong defensive performance, and not so much on the offensive side of the football. We've got game balls to hand out and 3 up, 3 down stock watch. Who's hot, who's not coming out of this game against the Indianapolis Colts. This episode brought your way courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. The Seahawks improving to 11-3 on Sunday, but certainly the game did not go as many expected it was going to. The Seahawks were 13.5-point favorites going into Sunday's game against the Colts, who were bringing 44-year-old Phillip Rivers out of a nearly 5-year retirement to start under center in place of an injured Daniel Jones, who's out for the season. Colts had a bunch of other injuries they were dealing with on defense. No Sauce Gardner, no DeForest Buckner. The Seahawks were coming in pretty darn healthy. Expectations, the Seahawks were going to be able to take care of business. But man, oh man, did it almost end up being a nightmare for Mike Macdonald's squad. And Macdonald said they weren't peeking forward to the Rams game on Thursday night, but it certainly looked like that was the case for much of this game, particularly in the first half, where even on defense, it seemed like the Seahawks were kind of walking through quicksand. They didn't look like the typical energized team that we've come accustomed to see from Mike Macdonald's squad. And they were letting the Colts move the football, not getting a lot of chunk plays. Phillip Rivers certainly was not throwing the ball downfield. That is something that was already slipping when he was playing in 2020 before he retired. But they were able to get some short passing game going. Jonathan Taylor had just enough success early on running the football that the Colts were able to build a 13-6 lead at halftime. And at that point, the Seahawks had just 80 total yards of offense. They had 3 rushing yards. Yes, that's not a typo. 3 rushing yards in the first 2 quarters. And the goal was to come in and run the football. That clearly is what the Seahawks were trying to do early in this game. And it was apparent early that the Colts weren't going to allow that to happen. The first drive of the game, Ken Walker III got a 3-yard gain on the first play. Then he gets stuffed for a 2-yard loss on a pitch. And Sam Darnold doesn't get the first down on the ensuing 3rd down play because he's pressured, gets hit, and throws to Cooper Kupp for a short gain punt. That really was how most of this game was for the Seahawks offensively. They couldn't get out of their way in the run game. They weren't able to get displacement vertically or horizontally in the gap or zone game. And Sam Darnold didn't have much time to work with. Now, after the game, Darnold said that some of that was on him. He needed to get the ball out quicker, but he was under duress fast a number of times in the first half. The Colts were doing a nice job mixing and matching their blitz packages, a couple of sim pressures thrown in there as well. And they were doing a really good job of keeping the Seahawks off balance. And that led to that 7-point deficit at halftime. The Seahawks, another game, 3rd straight game with 6 or fewer points in the first half. They've really struggled in the first 2 quarters of games here for close to a month, being able to put points on the scoreboard, and that continued today. And even into the second half, no touchdowns. And the Seahawks had only won 3 games in their franchise history where they had no offensive touchdowns. This ended up being number 4 because of Jason Myers and his brilliance. The 6 field goals, couple of 50-yarders and a 52-yarder in the first half. Game winner was a 56-yarder, and that was right after Groupie, the kicker for the Colts, had hit a 60-yarder to regain the lead inside 2 minutes to play. So the kickers really were the ones that were the stars of today's game. Defenses were able to get a lot of stops. The offenses, not a lot of explosive plays. Ton of struggles in situational football, particularly for the Seahawks, who started 1 for 9 in the first 3 quarters on third downs. Were not effective at all in the red zone either. Sam Darnold had a couple of potential first downs and touchdowns that he missed on. Throwing the football, Seattle could not run the ball inside the 20-yard line. That is another development here the last month or so. The red zone, where Seattle was a top 5 team in the first 10 weeks, they have not been able to finish off drives, and that really started in the Rams game, the first Rams game. They're going to have to get that figured out. So offensively, this was a really hard game to watch. Even though Sam Darnold ended up riding the ship in the fourth quarter, he was able to get some explosives to Rashid Shaheed, Jackson Smith and Jigba hitting the 100-yard mark again. Even though he started slow, they were able to get enough chunk plays down the stretch to get into range for Jason Myers to hit a bunch of field goals. They had 3 of them in the fourth quarter, including the game winner. That proved to be enough in this one, even with the litany of mistakes that the Seahawks made. I thought this was not a clean game, really. Defensively, you could say it was, for the most part, a pretty clean game. They did hold Jonathan Taylor to 87 rushing yards on 25 attempts, 3.5 yards per attempt. So they bottled up one of the NFL's best rushers. Phillip Rivers wasn't able to do much at all in the second half. They took away a lot of the quick game that he was succeeding with in the first 2 quarters. Did make a nice back shoulder throw that set up Groupie's field goal at the end that set it up to be 16-15. Looked like the Colts might still steal this one. But overall, the defense, I thought, played pretty darn well. The offense and special teams away from Jason Myers, there's a lot that you can nitpick, but certainly the offense, it's not even nitpicking it. It is becoming a significant concern in the sense that this offense now has had 3 straight games where, aside from the second half in Atlanta, the Seahawks just haven't been able to get their offense going. They found a little bit of a groove against Minnesota in the second half, but they still had their struggles in that game. In this game, no offensive touchdowns. They've got to figure out what is going wrong right now, and they've got 3 days to do it before their rematch with the Rams. They've got to figure out, why are we missing on these plays that we weren't missing on early in the season? Receivers are getting open, but we're not getting the football. The pass protection breakdowns that have been there, picking up blitzes. There were some obvious miscommunications in the first half, including with the running backs. I thought Zach Charbonnet had a couple really big misses in pass protection. So there's a lot of stuff that you can dissect just from the initial watch of this game. Offensively, something is not right. And yet you got to give the Seahawks credit. You know, this was a week that a lot had been discussed about Phillip Rivers and his comeback, and give him credit. I thought he played really well considering the circumstances. Colts did a nice job changing their offense to fit what he can do at this point in his career. And they did a decent job of moving the football and sustaining enough drives that they could get some points in this game. The defense for the Colts was pesky, and they did a good job keeping the Seahawks off balance. They were successful in the red zone time and time again late in the game. So you got to give the Colts credit. I mean, this is a team that had 8 victories coming in, even with the injuries they've dealt with. So there's a lot of good football players over there. I just didn't think the Seahawks were going to struggle offensively to move the football the way that they did once again. And really throughout the course of the game, fourth quarter did have the explosives, were able to start moving the ball up and down the field some, but I thought they would have much more success than what they did. I certainly expected them to find the end zone at least once offensively, which they didn't do. So that is a concern coming out of this game. But these kind of games can also be galvanizing forces for teams. Like, you're not always going to blow teams out. It's hard to win games in the NFL. Sometimes when you're off, not even close to your A game, finding a way to escape when the other team makes it difficult on you, these kind of wins can end up being really good for teams that are trying to seek championships as well. So at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a bad win. Even the ugliest win out there is not going to be worse than any kind of a loss. So the Seahawks get this 18-16 victory. They're 11-3. They're tied for first place still in the NFC West. They're tied for first place atop the conference standings. Everything is still in front of them. They still control their own fate with this massive game coming up against the Rams, where they have a chance to get sole possession, at least have the tiebreaker swing back in their favor against the Los Angeles Rams and be right there at the top of the NFC standings. Coming up next here on our post-game show, as we do each and every week, got some game balls to dish out: offense, defense, special teams. That'll be coming your way here next on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Our Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup, headaches, just instant smiles. Anyone who loves photos, whether it's your grandparents, parents, newlyweds, is going to love Aura Frames. Endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can also add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. It's a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in a drawer. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal's exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks squeaking out an 11th win, an 18-16 victory over the Indianapolis Colts. The very game Indianapolis Colts, they were thinking upset all day long, and they had the lead for a massive chunk of this game until Jason Myers came through with a couple field goals late in the fourth quarter. One that put Seattle out in front. The Colts counter with a field goal of their own to retake the lead, and then Myers 56 yards out, the winning field goal to make it 18-16. The Seahawks are getting it done even in the ugliest way possible. Just the fourth time in their team history that they have won a game that they did not score an offensive touchdown. So I guess you can look at it from that perspective. It couldn't have been much worse on offense, and the Seahawks still found a way to get it done. Let's get to our weekly game balls, shall we? Now, offensively, as I said, not a lot to be excited about. No offensive touchdowns for the Seahawks in this game, but they did have a few guys that played well on that side of the football, particularly late when they were able to find a way to steal this one when the Colts had been leading for the entirety of this game for the most part. They had been in the lead 13-6 at halftime. They were still up at the end of the third quarter. Late in the fourth quarter, they were able to regain the lead. Only a 32nd time that the Seahawks actually were in the lead in this one. So not a lot of stuff to be excited about on that side of the football. With that being said, a couple guys had big games in the passing game. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, first half, he had one of the worst drops that you're going to see by him, and there was nobody in front of him. So I think that was one of those cases where he was trying to run before he actually caught the football. We don't see JSN do that very often, but he proved that even he is human with the season that he is having. But a really nice bounce back after that, particularly in the second half. Jackson Smith-Njigba was the driving force of the passing game for much of the fourth quarter, had a 29-yard catch. He had a 39-yard reception that set up another field goal, the second field goal for the Seahawks, where he was able to spin his way away from a cornerback, got to the sideline, and added another 10 yards. And again, that put the Seahawks in prime position. It looked like maybe they could get a touchdown to really put this one on ice. And unfortunately, they had to settle for another field goal. But Smith-Njigba hits the 100-yard mark for the Seahawks on offense. It didn't look like he was going to get there for much of this game, but a strong fourth quarter, 7 catches, 113 yards, and he just continues to do a little bit of everything. And this was not a game that he was able to win vertically necessarily, but he was able to kill the Colts in the fourth quarter with the intermediate game, whether it was on curl routes, crossing patterns. Could have had an even bigger game if he wouldn't have dropped that gimme in the first half. But again, this is the kind of game it was for the Seahawks. They were making mistakes that we haven't seen them make, and they still found a way to overcome it. But Smith-Njigba gets to the 100-yard mark again, and he now has put together 13 games of 90 plus yards. It's just incredible what this kid has been able to do this year. The youngest player to ever do that, under 23, the only player that's been able to do that, having 13 games of 90 or more receiving yards a season. Aside from the Vikings game, he has been just flat out remarkable this season. So another game ball for Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's probably the fourth or fifth he's gotten here at our post-game shows with the season that he's having. On the defensive side of the football, the Seahawks holding the Colts to 16 points, but they only had one sack in this game. And I think that was one of the fascinating things is the Colts did such a good job of running their offense through the quick passing game. And this has been a strength for Phillip Rivers his entire football career. Even now at 44, gets the ball out quick. He doesn't get himself in a position where he gets pressured very often. And he really slowed down Seattle's pass rush by doing that. The one sack did come early in the game, courtesy of Nick Eamon-Warry, and it was a play that showed Phillip Rivers' age a little bit. He stumbled at midfield and called it the logo monster and was able to get up and got a couple yards back before Eamon-Warry tapped him. And so he gets his second straight week with a sack. But I thought Eamon-Warry was the best player for the Seahawks on defense again today. He had 2 pass breakups on the opening drive. He had a couple other really nice tackles. There was one that he looked like he was getting ready to suplex the guy, and luckily Devin Witherspoon was there telling him, don't do that along the sideline. So that could have been a bad penalty that was avoided, but finishes second on the team in tackles. He had those 2 pass breakups, had the sack. He had the best stat stuffing day. Didn't get the blocked field goal to go with it like he did last week in Atlanta, but still a really impressive performance for Eamon-Warry as he continues a fantastic rookie season, very much in the mix for defensive rookie of the year. And I think there was another instance in this game where he probably, if he didn't miss time, Phillip Rivers flutter balls that he was throwing around the field, it was catching guys off guard in this game, that he had an opportunity to get a third pass breakup working against Tyler Warren, but ended up being an incompletion after replay anyway, so it wasn't a big deal, but continues to do well in coverage. He's making tackles in space. He's getting involved in their pass rush. Eamon-Warry continues to impress and do a great job playing a number of different roles in Mike McDonald's defense. So second game ball there coming for Nick Eamon-Warry in consecutive weeks. And let's get to the special teams aspect. This is about as easy of a pick as you're going to find. Jason Myers, I have been saying this since the game ended today. Jason Myers, to me, has got to be a first-team All-Pro selection. There's no question in my mind that he has got to be the pick at this point. With 6 field goals today, Jason Myers now leads the NFL. He's got 37 made field goals. Nobody has more than 34 in the NFL. So he's leading the league in that department. He's tied for second with 9 field goals of 50-plus yards. So he isn't just making chip shots. He made the 56-yarder today winning the game. He had a 52-yarder earlier in the contest, which, as he was telling us after the game, that really helped him gauge where his limit was going to be in this game, and he felt comfortable that he could make that 56-yarder with 18 seconds to go. So just continues to be fantastic. He's got 3 game-winning field goals now this year. That's tied for second most in the league. I just think when you look at the entire resume, this isn't going to impact the voting, but he's also the all-time leading scorer now for the Seahawks. He passed Norm Johnson in that category. Everything that he's doing right now, to me, he is the best kicker in the league. He's got the best resume this season. He's never been an all-pro, never even made second team when he's had a couple of really good seasons. He's been a 2-time Pro Bowler. It's time to end that slight. He deserves to be, in my opinion, the first-team All-Pro kicker. I don't think anybody's been better in the NFL this year, and he's really bailed out the Seahawks, including in this game, being their entire source of offense with those 6 field goals to get this 2-point win. So I think he's having a phenomenal season. This was probably the best game of his career. He hasn't missed an extra point yet this season. Everything is pointing to him getting that elusive All-Pro award. He absolutely deserves it. He's having a fantastic season for the Seattle Seahawks. Coming up next, going to shift to our weekly stock watch. Who's hot, who's not, 3 up, 3 down, coming your way here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, whether it's a receiver like Jackson Smith and Jigba getting hot in the fourth quarter, a defense tightening things up, or momentum flipping after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. They've got live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props updating as players like Smith and Jigba heat up as the game progresses. You can bet on the next touchdown score, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Calling out all of our everydayers out there. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Seahawks with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonseahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Again, that's lockedonseahawks.supercast.com. The Seahawks improving to 11-3, albeit an ugly win, as I mentioned earlier. An ugly win is always better than a loss. You'll take any type of win in the National Football League, but that's certainly what the Seahawks had today, an 18-16 victory over Phillip Rivers and the Colts. The Colts were ahead throughout this contest. Looked like they might still steal this game at the end, but Sam Darnold finding a way to orchestrate a field goal winning drive in the final minute. Jason Myers connects, goes 6 for 6 on field goals. No offensive touchdowns. The Seahawks still win, the fourth time they have done that in team history. Let's get to our stock watch, 3 up, 3 down. This is certainly a win that's going to have pros and cons. There's pluses and negatives coming out of this game in terms of performance. Let's get to the players who shined today for the Seattle Seahawks and who's hot. And we got to start with the other receiver that had a really good game today. And it feels like Rashid Shaheed has truly turned the corner for the Seattle Seahawks. He had that really quiet start the first 4 games after they traded for him, got him from the New Orleans Saints. Last week, though, had to kick return for a touchdown, 4 catches for 67 yards. He was even more effective today for the Seahawks. Had 7 targets, 5 catches, 74 yards, nearly 15 yards per catch. And he's really the one that got this passing game going. Jackson Smith and Jigba had a couple big catches afterwards, but they had no passes in the first half that were more than 18 yards. They were not getting the chunk plays that we have consistently seen from the Seahawks offense in the first 3 quarters, really. And then Shaheed comes open, breaks a tackle, gets a couple extra yards, 27-yard gain that ignites their first field goal drive in the fourth quarter. Jackson Smith and Jigba has a 29-yard catch a few plays later. That 27-yard catch from Shaheed really seemed to get things going. And then late in the contest, when Seattle fell back behind with Groupie's field goal that made it 16-15, Shaheed was the one that Sam Darnold looked to on their game-winning drive. Found him over the middle for a 17-yard completion on their first play. They had no timeouts, but they were able to quickly get to the ball and clock it. And then Shaheed had an 8-yard catch where he got out of bounds. So the fact they didn't have any timeouts didn't matter there. That set them up with the field position for Myers to kick the game-winning 56-yard kick. So just another really good game from Shaheed. He was hurt on special teams a little bit by some blocks in the back from Eric Saubert, and I believe there was another one that ended up being negated because of a face mask penalty on defense. These teams were making mistakes on special teams, but Shaheed was not the issue. Maybe you can look at the 6-yard line fair catch. That might not have been a great idea necessarily. Seattle was consistently in bad field position, and that did not help. But offensively, Shaheed is really coming into his own, and he and Sam Darnold seem to be on the same page. They had a close call in the end zone late that Darnold threw a little bit behind him, felt incomplete. So there's still some things they're working on, but clearly that connection is getting a lot better. You're starting to see the big plays with his explosive 4.3 speed, and that opens things up for Smith and Jigba and the entire rest of this offense. My second big winner here, Leonard Williams. He does it every week, but we got to see Big Cat get after it, had a couple of tackles for loss in a game where Phillip Rivers was getting the football out of his hand like it was a hot potato. That's the way that he plays the game. Williams, one of the few guys that was able to get a big lick on him, and had a couple quarterback hits, one in the second half where he knocked the veteran QB to the ground. So we got to see Big Cat do a number of things. He blew up a screen in this game as well. So another quality outing for Leonard Williams, and it's become so expected that I think sometimes that excellence gets overlooked, but he was fantastic today. And Julian Love getting a lot more snaps this week in his second game back, had a pass breakup in the opening drive against Tyler Warren, the sensational rookie tight end for Indianapolis, had another pass breakup later in the game. Didn't get tested much because the Colts weren't throwing the ball downfield, but he and Kobe Bryant were both coming up and making tackles in the run game, a lot of split safety looks, and the Colts still couldn't run it very effectively on him. A big part of that is the safeties coming up and cleaning things up, but a really good second game back from injury for Julian Love. That's an encouraging sign as they get ready to play the Rams on Thursday Night Football. All right, let's flip the script real quick. Again, it's a win, but there was plenty of downside to this game, far from the comfortable win that many were expecting the Seahawks to have against the Colts, given their quarterback was coming out of a 5-year retirement and the injuries they were dealing with. Plenty of negatives, but rather than highlighting a lot of specific players, I think you have to look at some of the positional units or some of the specific aspects the Seahawks struggle with in this game. And first and foremost, the run game, as I mentioned at the start of the show. Clint Kubiak came out with the game plan clearly that they were going to try to stretch things out a little bit perimeter-wise, running the football against the Colts defense that for most of the year has been pretty darn good defending the run. Maybe not quite as good as Seattle statistically, but they have done a good job stopping the run. Seattle came out believing that they could win off tackle, that they could get to the sideline. And aside from a Zach Charbonnet carry or two in the second half where they had some room to operate, that was not the case. But this was a really rough game. You look at the stats for the Seahawks. Charbonnet, 8 carries, 31 yards. Is okay, 3.9 yards per carry. Ken Walker, 9 carries, 17 yards, 1.9 yards per attempt. Sam Darnold, 4 carries, 5 yards. That included the kneel down in there, but he had a fumble that fortunately was punched out of bounds. So you look at the numbers, 22 carries, 50 yards. Rashid Shaheed had a negative 3-yard run, which it was nothing he could do. The guy read it perfectly and got knocked down in the backfield, but they averaged 2.3 yards per carry in this football game. This was one of the worst performances they had. And I saw some people on social media immediately pointing to the center change. And to me, that, I got to go back and watch the all 22, and maybe that was part of it. But a lot of the issues the Seahawks were having were their runs outside. Ken Walker III got blasted for a 2-yard loss on the second play of the game. That certainly wasn't Jalen Sundell's fault. And there were several other runs that were on the perimeter that got shut down. So it seemed like it was more of a game planning issue. The Seahawks did have a little more success running the ball in the second half with Zach Charbonnet. But this was one of their weakest performances on the ground all year long. And picked the wrong game to do that with the passing game struggling early, the pass protection not being there. That is going to lead into my second downside here on 3 down. It's the blitz pickup. And you could put a little bit of this on the quarterback. Sam Darnold doing what good quarterbacks do, was taking the blame afterwards that I got to get the ball out of my hands quicker. But this was a game where in the first 2 quarters, there were a number of systemic issues in terms of the pass protection calls and the execution. That is not on the quarterback. And namely, Zach Charbonnet, he had 2 plays that the Colts sent an extra rusher, and unfortunately, he didn't do his job. He didn't go up and make a play and get his hands on the blitzer. He struggled with that. So that's a situation where you got to have your running back getting his hands on guys. He's got to keep his feet moving. Typically, Charbonnet is really good at that, but he had a couple of plays where he just flat out missed, and it left Sam Darnold wide open to being hit or having to step out of the pocket and leading to incompletions. And they had a couple other plays where their offensive line struggled to pick guys up as well. So I think when you consider that, the blitz pickup is still a major issue the Seahawks have got to get figured out. It's on everybody. The QB's playing part of that, but they've got to get their blitz pickup with the running backs and the communication aspect. All that stuff has got to get cleaned up because the Rams are going to be looking to take advantage of that on Thursday night. And this has been a persistent issue during this slump offensively for much of the past 3 games. They got to get that figured out here the next couple days, why they are not excelling the way they did the first 10 weeks. And, that included against some teams. I thought second half against Atlanta, they did a better job picking up blitzes. They did a better job in the second half of this game, but they've got to come out faster. It has been a major issue for them the last 3 games. I think as big of a problem on offense as they've got that's contributing to the struggle scoring points that we didn't see in the first half of the season. And last but not least, look, I got to pick on the tight ends a little bit here. And this isn't just an offense. It's also a special teams aspect. And Elijah Arroyo on injured reserve. So he missed today's game. He's going to miss the rest of the regular season. He'll be eligible to return in the playoffs, assuming the Seahawks get into the postseason. But this was just not a good day for Seahawks tight ends. A.J. Barner had a first down catch that was wiped out by an offensive offside penalty, and he clearly was offsides. He didn't like the call, but it was clearly an easy one for the officials to make. So that play wiped out a first down, and Seattle ended up just going backwards from there and punting out of their end zone. That was a major issue in the first half, really poor field position, and then just going backwards with that really poor field position. Eric Saubert, in his first game back from his calf injury, had a block in the back penalty that wiped out a good kick return by Rashid Shaheed. He missed a few blocks in the run game as well. Had a catch for 9 yards, but he looked pretty rusty in every other department. And Brady Russell, playing the fullback spot with Robbie Oots being a surprise inactive, had a wide open catch out of the flats and had it bounce off his hands and missed a tackle on special teams. It just seemed like the tight end group, for whatever reason, across the board. I thought Nick Callerup had some rough reps in the run game where guys got past him. Just seemed like that group collectively did not play well, not just on offense, but on special teams as well. We'll get a chance to go back to the All-22. Maybe it won't look as bad as it did live, but it just felt like that was a group that had a lot of mistakes in this football game that were costly on offense as well as special teams. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back tomorrow, it's a special episode of Monday Musings. Just like the Seahawks are going to be doing, we're going to be squeezing our normal schedule into a couple of episodes. So make sure to be tuning in. That'll be dropping tomorrow night with my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe and listen in. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Go Hawks.